Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is my co-host, Danny Gillette, and we're back here on this Wednesday for another episode of the podcast. We're going to look ahead to the Penn State game tonight for the Nebraska men's basketball team. We're going to break down the bracketology discussion and look at what the Huskers have to do over these next 5-6 games to make the NCAA tournament. We're also going to evaluate some comments by Matt Rhule at the High School Broyles Award, where he basically guaranteed that Nebraska was going to win beyond 7 games this year. So we'll discuss that. And also EJ Barthel, who had some interest from Penn State and Texas, is hanging around at Nebraska, signed a new contract. So we're going to touch on all that stuff. Before we do, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And Danny, how are you doing on this Wednesday morning?
I'm good. I feel like we haven't had one of these in a while, but got a lot of news to cover. Good to see you. And, it's the off season. So I'm thinking, news will be slow. News will be few and far between, and there won't be a lot going on. And I'm always wrong every single time. So that's certainly the case today.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of news, and we missed our usual show on Monday. I had to take a trip for my day job, and it was a hellish trip, and I kind of got tired and was a little bit sick, so a little under the weather. That's why we delayed things a little bit, but seems like a good time to jump back into it. Got Nebraska basketball tonight, and yeah, always a lot of news with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So let's just start there before we get into basketball with EJ Barthel. This kind of came up on, I think it was Monday, that he was on a short list of candidates for Texas. He had also talked to Penn State about their, running backs coach job. Tashard Choice from Texas just went to Detroit, and he obviously did a great job with their running back room there with Texas. Kyle Flood, the Texas offensive coordinator, did have a tie to EJ Barthel, and Pete Nakos had reported that he was kind of on a short list. But that drama didn't last long, as Matt Rhule, signed to a new contract extension on Tuesday to kind of put that to bed. So what are your thoughts on that and EJ Barthel being retained by Matt Rhule?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he had interest from Texas because, quite frankly, I thought that if they were really interested in a running backs coach, they could have gotten, somebody better, for lack of a better way to put it. Barthel's interesting because he's a very good Northeast recruiter. He's a very good recruiter, but I need to see a little bit more out of the running back room next year. Now, granted, I know that's not all his fault. The offense was a mess last year until Holgorsen came in. Offensive coordinator Dana Holgorsen came in, and that was towards the end of the season. So I understand that there was a lot of deficiencies in the offense last season. But I think, to me, the biggest win here is having that Northeast recruiter and his recruiting ability. It'll be interesting to see what Emmett does this year, Emmett Johnson. It'll be interesting to see what some of the running backs do this year, because I would like to see a little bit more production out of the running back room. But again, that's not all his fault. There were a lot of extenuating circumstances that made the running game struggle last year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think for the most part, he's done a pretty decent job. But yeah, it hasn't really landed, a major, kind of blue chip talent, although Jamarian Parker could be that guy this year. So, we'll see, and we'll see how things go with Emmett Johnson. And then some of these other guys too that he's recruited, Quentin Ives. I mean, he was a big kind of pusher, or a big reason that Quentin Ives is a Nebraska Cornhusker. Nelson as well. So we'll see if he can, develop some of these guys to be successful at Nebraska, because he's never really been a position coach at a school like this. He's, was at UConn and some other places. So yeah, I think he's done a good job though. And, Emmett Johnson definitely, I think, took a step forward last year, and some of that probably had to do with Dana Holgorsen, but clearly Nebraska sees the value in EJ Barthel, and some other programs, I think, at least saw it too. And so yeah, I think it's a nice move, and I think it's a good thing to have this coaching staff, hopefully finalized. We keep saying that, and hopefully that's true now, but it just goes to show how, other dominoes can impact things very quickly.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to kind of see some continuity on the offensive staff with so many changes. I think it's good to have Barthel back in that respect too. Granted, I'm a fan of the new changes offensively, but it's good that Barthel's coming back for that continuity to see if he can get even more out of Emmett Johnson. And last year he had Dante Dowdell. This year it's going to be, I'm very interested to see who the number 2 running back is going to be, but I'm confident that Barthel can get whoever it is in the right direction.
So, and then I wanted to mention, now that we've got, the coaching staff kind of finalized, another football topic here before we get to basketball. that I thought was interesting. And some people maybe have probably seen this speech, but Matt Rhule, of course, was doing the speech for the high school Royals Award, and just being Matt Rhule, of course, he does a great job anytime he does kind of public speaking. But he did say something that I thought was interesting about Nebraska football, and basically that he said last year, we got the 7 wins, and we plan on making a jump this season. When we make that jump, people are going to say all kinds of things. And then he started talking about how he believed that it was the Frosted Flakes with ice cream before every game is going to be part of their winning tradition. So he made it kind of the humorous thing, which he's very great at doing. But the lead there was that they won 7 games last year, and that they plan on making a jump. And like Matt, I mean, you can see that, with guys just like with EJ Barthel, the way that they've, solidified this coaching staff, the way they've added to this coaching staff, the way they've added, coordinators to the offensive line. It does seem like this program really does believe it's ready for a jump. So do you, Danny Gillette, believe that, this program can take a jump next season?
Yeah, the schedule is very favorable. This offense is probably the best it's been in, I don't know how long. This defense, I think, is going to be really good because we got to see some of the explosiveness of guys like Shavers and McGahee under Butler during the bowl game, right? And so I do think this team is going to take a jump and kind of reach or go past that, bowl game win plateau to 8 or 9 wins. I do think it's very realistic, and it's a realistic thing to say that they will be able to make a jump.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that, Matt Rhule said that. But, he's very confident in this team. I think he has a lot of reasons to be confident in it. And like you said, the schedule is not overly difficult, although it can always look different than it does right now. I mean, nobody expected Illinois to be, one of our more difficult games going into the 2024 season, and it was. So, always be cautious about the schedule, because that can be smoke and mirrors at times. But I do think that the pieces are in place for this team to make a big jump next year. And I think they need to, or I think there's going to be some whispers about Matt Rhule's job security if they did. If this team wins 7 games again, I think the fan base is going to get, a little restless, which they have already, under Matt Rhule. Thankfully, they were able to, win that Wisconsin game. And I think that Boston College win, did help, because, going 6-7, I think that would have left a sour taste in my mouth going into this offseason for sure.
I was going to say, if we fired coaches based on whether the fan base was getting a little restless, we would have had like 17 different coaches last year. So
well, Fred Hoiberg would have been fired at halftime on Sunday night. So
yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit.
We'll get to that in a second.
But yeah, no, I mean, I don't think 7 wins would be enough to get Matt Rhule on the hot seat, but I do expect a jump. I mean, you have to look at, where Nebraska football has been and, where it's going. And while 7 wins would be a bit of a disappointment, getting a bowl game victory and things like that would definitely be respectable. But I do expect, 8 or 9 wins at the very least, maybe even 10. And so we'll see what happens. But yeah, as far as, the fans getting restless, I mean, some of them still think it's 1995, so I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, obviously, some semblance of the fans get I don't think he'll be, quite on the hot seat, but there'll definitely be, some chatter. There'll be some chatter. I'll say that if they finish 7-5, depending how it goes too, but I think there'll be some chatter. He just needs to, at some point when you got Rhule and all these guys, like, you got to put it together, and they've put all the pieces in place. I mean, the roster, I think they've done a really nice job on the roster. They're recruiting really well. I mean, I do think that's one thing that's not talked about enough is how well this class did in terms of, blue chip prospects. I mean, Nebraska's over 50% recruiting in blue chippers. I mean, I can't remember the last time that's happened. And if they can consistently do that, like, this team is going to be in the college football playoff. Like, it just is. I don't know how you can have that much talent. And I do think that Matt Rhule is a competent coach. I'm not saying he's the greatest head coach ever, but I think he's a pretty competent guy. And so I just feel like the way things are going, Nebraska is definitely trending up in the right direction. And hopefully, we'll start to see more of those, tangible results on the field this season. But the infrastructure is there for this program to, I think compete. I'm not going to say like the best of the best, like compete to be a top 3, but I think they're set to be, a top 15, top 20 program for, for the foreseeable future. I'll say that.
And for someone who likes to develop talent, the way that they were able to, get quality guys out of the transfer portal and kind of go against that strategy in that respect was also impressive on his part too.
But what I also like too is some of those guys, they filled some immediate needs for sure. But like you look at Nowhere, you look at like Isaiah Hunter, Hardly Gilmore, those are all guys that have multiple, years to play. I think Elijah Pritchett does too. So while they did add some kind of stopgap guys like Dane
Gabe
Key and
Moore
Rocco
too, yeah.
Spindler, Gabe Moore, but they also have been, I think, very strategic about getting guys that, okay, he could start here and then maybe have a couple more years after. So I really like how, that portal class is coming together. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the spring, but I think, and that's one thing too about not having a spring game, we're not going to get to see as much as fans as we usually do of like the offensive scheme and the defensive scheme and all that. But, I don't think I think it's probably going to be a good thing anyway, moving forward. And,
Ohio State just did it and they didn't get as much shit, quite frankly, as Matt Rhule did. So, there you go.
Yeah, I know. It's just, I don't know. Matt Rhule, I don't know why he seems to be like a lightning rod for the media. I don't know why. It's just really things that he says. And I think it's because he's just so, he's an open book. I mean, really, for a college football coach. I mean, yes, he's not like, he doesn't say everything. He's not transparent about everything, but he's pretty transparent about what he's thinking and what his motives are. And that's pretty different from what we see, from almost every other college football coach in America. So I think that that's why at times he's opened himself up for some stupid criticisms, I think, from the media, just because, he does say things that maybe others wouldn't say that are actually probably true.
But he gets Nebraska in the headlines, and I think that's smart as well because he doesn't say anything too outlandish to where it makes the program look bad, but he gets people talking about the program, and hey, that counts for something these days.
Well, I think he's just, Matt Rhule's not afraid to say like, hey, man, like, it was like when he was talking about the quarterback, when Nebraska had to get a quarterback before they got Raiola, he was like, yeah, it's going to cost us like $2 million, and like, it's not that people didn't know that, but he was one of the first ones to actually like say it and define it and be like, this is what you have to do in order to get a quarterback. So,
and then the check came shortly after, so that was a smart play by him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the reality of it. I mean, like, it's kind of that thing. Like if you want turkey pot pie for dinner, then you better ask who's putting the grocery list together to get you some turkey. You know what I'm saying? Like you better have enough money on your card to go get the turkey and the stuffing and everything you need for your pot pie. So I mean, that was smart by Matt Rhule, and I think he's really great with the media. He did actually did an interview with Josh Pate too, where he said he'd like to see the top 40 or 50 teams kind of coalesce, which I agree with as well. I think we need to make a shift in college football and, really put the haves into a group, and the have-nots can still have, really true, great traditional college football, the Mountain West and all these similar, the University of Montana program that I, graduated from and support, those smaller programs, I think, can have a great FCS league with like almost 100 teams. That would be awesome. And then we can have a true college football NFL style league with everybody playing each other. And I think that's where it's going to go. It's unfortunate. I mean, I wish that, the SEC championship hadn't ruined college football, but it did. So that's where we are.
And now that I'm just thinking about it, he was even right about 4 Big Ten teams making the college football playoff, because now I think the Big Ten and SEC are in talks about it. So, I mean, he's been right on the money for a lot of these things. And yeah, and I'll just say this again because it's worth repeating. It's time to stop pretending that college football is about academics. Let's make it what it is now.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's been always been about money, and it's time for the players are finally getting their cut. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, the expanded bids. I don't love the guaranteed bids for the Big Ten and the SEC, but I mean, it is what it is. We have them in
I
the
don't love it
NFL.
either, but I mean, it just means that some probably like Alabama last year probably get in with the guaranteed bids this year. So I don't know. Like,
yeah, I don't love that either, because it's been really funny to see that debate. I don't know if you saw this, but Ari Wasserman actually of On3 did a show with Paul Feinbaum and like a fan from Georgia, and they were talking about the playoffs and who should have got in. It was, but Ari, and he covered Ohio State, and so him and but I actually think he did a really good job on this little back and forth. And so he was like, okay, SEC guy, SEC Georgia guy, if you're saying that Indiana and SMU shouldn't have got in, who would you put in? And then he's like, because every other team from the SEC got beat, Alabama. And so he just continually kept going back to his point that like Alabama and all these programs were just better because that's who they are. And it's like, I mean, it's just crazy to me, like these SEC people, like the results on the field don't matter. It's like, well, the recruiting rankings are the only thing that matter, and it's like, I understand that thinking and I understand that thought process, but like, you have to, if the games don't matter, why are we even playing the games? Like at the end of the day, that's a pretty fundamental point. And at some point, it's like I do high school basketball rankings for Montana, and it's like I have an idea who I think the number one team is. But if they don't win some of their games, like at some point I have to penalize them in the rankings. Like I can't just put this team at the top without the best record. Like at some point you have to prove it on the field. And I feel like that, and like this SEC guy was like citing how many SEC championships that they've won, or how many national titles the SEC's won over the last 25 years. Like that's irrelevant. What the SEC has done in past years is irrelevant to this season. Just like whatever the Big Ten did this year is irrelevant in 2025. It shouldn't have any impact. And that's the thing that drives me nuts about college football is like in the NFL, like it is truly a meritocracy. It does not matter. Like the Eagles sucked in 2024. You know what I mean? They didn't suck, but they, got beat out in the first round of the playoffs. There wasn't a single person, I mean, before they got Saquon Barkley, but there wasn't a ton of people being like, yeah, the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. Even before the playoffs started, not a lot of people were putting their flag on the Eagles. And they clearly proved that they're the best team on the field. And I feel like that it's become harder and harder to do that in college football for some of these programs because your reputation means as much as what you can actually do. And that's what we need to get away from.
Well, I feel like there's always been, and there still is, this notion that the SEC is king, and that's not true anymore. And so I think that's been a hard pill for Alabama fans and SEC fans to swallow.
Yeah, no, it has been. And it's not to say they're never going to be, dominant again. They could be next year, but it's just, let's stop preordaining that the SEC is better than everybody else, because this year showed that that's just not true. That's fundamentally just not true. Because that Alabama team, if they got beat by a Michigan team that didn't even have most of its best players. And Michigan, really dominated them on the defensive side of the ball without like 5 first-round picks. So it's like, let's not act like these programs are, so high and mighty. But at any rate, let's switch to some Nebraska basketball talk now. So yeah, Sunday was kind of a scary day. Maybe it was me getting off the road that got the team back on the mix, because once I got into my living room, they started playing a lot better. And Fred had to punch the I think he had to punch the whiteboard and must have smashed it or cracked it and busted his hand open a little bit. But yeah, it was wild that I had my prediction post that I had posted that morning, and people were commenting on that about how Fred Hoiberg should be fired after that game, at halftime of that game, and it's just like, and I remember sitting and I commented even there, and I was like, for one, it's hard to win Big Ten games on the road. So, let's just chill out a little bit. And second, I was like, there's a lot of time left to go in this game. And I think I even posted that on X. I said, like, there's a lot of ball game left. And usually I'm the person that's freaking out, but I don't know. I just had a feeling that this team could come back. But even if they lost that game, like, the season wouldn't have been over. Like, they still would have plenty of opportunities. So I don't understand why people want to throw Fred Hoiberg like onto the hot seat. No. Stop thinking like that. Fred Hoiberg is the best coach Nebraska can. Like, he's the next Danny Nee. If people will just stop being idiots and just let him do his job, he'll be the next Danny Nee, and he will get us an NCAA tournament win. Just let the man do his thing.
Because who else is going to come? Like, you got to think about it. Fred Hoiberg's managed to last an entire rebuild, went to the NCAA tournament last year, recruits, in the transfer portal really, really well. And I know we had a discussion about this a couple of weeks ago about whether he should recruit more in-state and not in the transfer portal. But for what it's worth, it seems to be working, And so you got to, I feel like people have an unrealistic ceiling for Nebraska basketball, and they think that, this team should be, 32-0 every year. But, firing Fred Hoiberg would absolutely be stupid. And I get that some of his strategies are frustrating, but, to me, it's like, why would you fire Fred Hoiberg? Who else are you going to bring in to coach Nebraska basketball in a crowded Big Ten conference that will be able to, get this program to reach its full potential? Nobody.
And I just feel like he's, such a proven winner. I mean, he did it at Iowa State. I know he didn't do that well in the NBA, but the NBA is based on who's on your roster, and he was stuck with some really crappy teams in the NBA. So, like, just throw that out the window. Like, he knows he can coach ball. And I think the most impressive thing is over the last 3 years. I mean, each of the last 3 seasons, he's found a way to, put together an impressive run in February. Even the year before that, when they really struggled, they found a way to win some games against ranked teams in February. So, like, every single year, the past 4 years, Fred Hoiberg's team has been getting better. And that's a sign of good coaching. And, like, they're trending up again. Probably going to make the NCAA tournament for the second year in a row. And, like, to me, I feel like Nebraska, like, if they could ever get to a Sweet 16, like, that would probably be the equivalent of a national championship, because I don't know if they can get beyond that. Like, it's going to take a tremendous amount of luck for them to ever get beyond that, like, to ever reach a Final Four. But if anybody's ever going to get them there, I feel like Fred Hoiberg is the guy. And like, let's get an NCAA tournament win first, but I truly feel like this man should be our head coach for as long as he wants to do it. And I just get really, I know we had that like episode where we talked about it a little bit, and that was more just because, people were bringing it up. But at the end of the day, like, I trust in Fred Hoiberg, and I think he's the best coach that Nebraska can get, for now and well into the future. And at any rate, in terms of where they sit in the bracketology, after this last win, I mean, they're 7-8 in the Big Ten, but if you look at the bracket matrix, there's 104 bracket projections out there, and Nebraska's in the field in every single one of them. They're off the bubble according to ESPN. So, like, I have said, like, for a long time now, I think Nebraska needs to get 10 Big Ten wins overall, and that means regular season and conference play combined. So right now they're 7-8. If they win, I think if they win 2 more, I think if they go 3-2 over these next 5 games, they're stone cold locked in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and you look at some of the matchups. I mean, they would be very entertaining games. I saw one with the University of Connecticut. I saw one with Louisville, who I really don't want to be matched up with, but that's okay. But some of these teams, like, I feel like when this team is firing on all cylinders, they're very difficult to beat. And one of the things, we've talked about Fred Hoiberg's player development with players on the roster and how it hasn't always been the best, but over these last couple games, Braxton May has really played at a high level, and he was benched at the end of January following the Wisconsin game, and it would have been easy for him to kind of hang his head and give up on the season, but instead, he's worked his way back into the starting lineup, and the unfortunate injury to Berke Boyakatensil has really afforded me a chance and opportunity to make an impact for this program, and he's done really, really well, I think, and that's a credit to the coaching staff for helping him along and allowing him to have a bigger role, and he's taking advantage of it.
Yeah, that was impressive work with the Berkey's last name too. I have really struggled with that. Is it Boyakatensil? Boyakatensil. Yeah, I gotta, yeah, that's a tough one, but they've really missed him. But yeah, I'm with you. Braxton May was one of the reasons. Or is it Mia? Is it Braxton Mia? I think I might.
Is it Mia? See, I can pronounce Boyakatensil, but I can't do Mia or May, or I think it might be Mia. So,
I think it is Mia. So sorry, I've been screwing that up. I've been listening to, because I was on the road for the last 2 games traveling for my job, so I would listen to I listened to Kent on the radio broadcast. So got a little more clarification, and then I was like, oh man, I really am not good at pronunciations, but that's what you get. I've spent my life as a print journalist, so I spell names, not pronounce them. So I'm still working on that, but Mia's rim protection, his ability to score inside, he had 10 points. I mean, making free throws, like, and not only he blocked a couple shots, but he also affected a bunch of other shots as well. So that was a really great effort from him, and just the way that he has come on, and like he said, he didn't pout. He just whatever. If Fred asked him to play 7 minutes, he played 7 quality minutes, and now he's asking him to play 20 some minutes, and he's giving him 20 quality minutes. So like, a few weeks ago, you're like, man, why did Fred recruit this dude? And now you see why. So again, like, I just have kind of got to that point where I just trust Fred Hoiberg. At the end of the day, I trust Fred Hoiberg implicitly with this team, and I'm not saying everything's always going to go well. There's going to be times where it's frustrating. I've been frustrated this year, but I trust him as the mechanic, because he's very good, it seems like, at going in there He knows the game at being like, okay, man, like our basketball team is messed up. Like, what do we got to do to fix it? And the last 3 years, even the last 4 years, he's gone in there and tinkered and found a way, which I think is a pretty valuable thing to have in a coach to figure that out like midway through the
Yeah.
season. But at
And
any rate,
to accept that he needs to make changes and that it can't be, continuous of the same thing. And, like I said a couple shows ago, it always seems like he finds his groove this time of year, late February, early March, and right now it's paying off in a big way. And I think honestly too, what he's done with Braxton May, instead of making him kind of defend on the perimeter, he's kept May inside, and I think that's helped him a lot too. Because I think he's obviously a natural inside post player, and forcing him to defend on the wing could make for some difficult matchups. So I think they've done a better job at keeping him inside in the paint.
And I love too that I think that the whole thing that happened on Sunday too shows that Fred is a true leader. He knows the pulse of his team, because sometimes it really is not about X's and O's. It's not. And that Sunday was it. It wasn't that Nebraska was, Northwestern was just like simply out execute. They just were getting outplayed. Nebraska was just getting outplayed by a Northwestern team that wanted it more in that first half. And Fred Hoiberg was all of us, because it was like, why are you guys not playing with more urgency? Like, what's at stake in this game, right? And it was like, it took that moment from Fred to wake this team up. And so, to me, that was a great sign of not only like this man knows basketball, but he's a leader of these guys and they follow him. And I thought that was a defining moment in his Nebraska career, Fred Hoiberg's.
Yeah, I was getting so frustrated. I even remember tweeting to you or Xing to you, whatever it is now, that you're lucky you're not watching this game because it looks terrible on the TV and it must sound awful on the radio. But hey, you know what? They stormed back. I think it was
20 points.
20 points in the second half, and Bryce Williams, he continues to be just rock solid for this program. He seems to always be able to get to the line, create his own shots, and get points. And, I would definitely put him, in the conversation for my all-time Nebraska basketball team, because, boy, you talk about transfer portal pickups. Williams has been huge these last 2 seasons.
And I got to look at some other players' stats. I haven't researched it that much, but in addition to all first team all Big Ten, should we be talking about Bryce Williams as Big Ten Player of the Year at this point? Because
I think he's definitely
this dude's been incredible. I mean, he's been incredible. So I did want to mention women's bracketology before we focus on Penn State here. So it's been a little bit of a downward trend for the women. They did get an important win at Maryland. They lost at Illinois. So they're in the last 4 byes. So they're the 5th to last team projected in the tournament by ESPN. So some work to do there for Amy Williams' crew here over the next couple of weeks. They've got 3 regular season games left and then the Big Ten tournament. So a little bit of a different schedule. Still should be in, but a little bit of work to do there. So tonight, going into the Penn State game, Penn State has really been on a downward trend. They've lost 12 of 13 games. They're 13-13 overall, but they're one of the last place teams in the Big Ten. But still, this won't count as a quad 1 win. They did drop out of that range. They're I think 80th or something in the NET rankings. So that's kind of a bummer. They're still close though, which shows you how good the Big Ten is when you have your last place team is still in the top 80. But I mean, it's winning on the road is never easy in this conference. And Penn State, they're the third best team in the Big Ten at forcing turnovers. So that is something that worries me about this game. Ace Baldwin is also a dynamic scorer, so that kind of worries me. And Nebraska struggled with turnovers before, so Penn State is very, very good at getting steals. They're second in the Big Ten at steals, and so. I worry about Ace Baldwin going off and then giving a bunch of turnovers and stuff like that. That's how I think this could be a game. Nebraska's a 1.5 point favorite. So the odds makers see a tight one in Happy Valley. How do you see this one going, Danny?
I definitely see this as a tight one because we thought the same thing about Northwestern, right? Oh, kind of a lower Big Ten team should kind of be an easier game, but Northwestern came out on all cylinders, and I expect Penn State to do the same thing. I mean, this is a very tough team, and I know they've hit, like you said, a downward spiral, a downward trend recently, but, for them, this is the perfect game to get back on track. So I'm not expecting an easy game at all. I think a 1 point favorite is definitely, where it needs to be, where that needs to be, and no game is easy in the Big Ten. And I think Nebraska is going to be in for a dogfight tonight. I think they'll win, but I don't think Penn State's just going to roll over and accept defeat.
And things are for both teams. This is actually a really important Big Ten game. And yes, Penn State is in last place right now at 3-12, but they're, Northwestern is 4-11. Washington's 4-10. Rutgers is 5-10. So they're within range of making that top 15 is the point. And so they need wins badly, like really badly, if they're going to make the Big Ten tournament and try to keep their season alive. So, I mean, it's really easy to sit there and look at Penn State. Oh, they're 13-13, but like these guys don't want their careers to end either. And if they lose to Nebraska, like that's much more likely to happen without even getting to, the Big Ten tournament. So I do think that has added a little bit more urgency, making it so those top three teams don't make it. It's kind of that like relegation almost of soccer kind of vibe. They're obviously not getting relegated, but relegated to not making it to the Big Ten tournament, I guess. So I do expect Penn State's best effort, and they probably view this as a winnable game. Nebraska is also, it's very much jumbled as you got Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Purdue, Maryland. You got Nebraska is in 8th place right now, tied with Oregon, tied with Ohio State. USC's one game behind. So Nebraska needs wins too, or they're going to end up, in that 10. I mean, they could still be like seeded 10th in the Big Ten tournament and still make the NCAA tournament. That's how deep the league is this year.
I mean, heck, even Minnesota beat UCLA last night. I missed Mick Cronin's probable rant, but I'm sure I'll see that pretty soon. But no, this conference is not easy, and that's what I kept trying to tell people when they were upset about Sunday's game against Northwestern. I'm like, Northwestern may be at the bottom of the league, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad team. This league is loaded this year, and probably one of the most even leagues, if you will, that I've seen in quite a while. I don't know about you, but I feel like this year has been very, very tight for basketball.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said. I mean, Minnesota, who's recognized as one of the worst teams, they've beaten UCLA and Michigan, two of the better teams right now. So, I mean, that anybody can beat anybody in the Big Ten. I mean, Northwestern, they took Michigan, who is the first place team. They took them to overtime in Ann Arbor. So, I mean, like it's very tough. Every game is very tough, and that's what that was kind of my point to people too on Sunday. Was like,
yeah,
these other guys get paid too, and it's very difficult to win Big Ten road games. So, yeah, sometimes if you're not playing your best, you're going to fall behind. And these other programs, they're not just like, they're still thinking of themselves as having the ability to make a run. And so you never know what can happen. But looking at this one, you've got Penn State, and then you've got Michigan at home on, I think, Monday. It's kind of like a weird schedule. But I mean, really, I think Nebraska's in, a solid position. They've just, like I said, go 3-2 or, go 2-3 and then win a game in the Big Ten tournament. But I think as long as they get to 20 wins, I think that they're going to make the field.
Yeah, and it would be quite the achievement for a program that has had such a roller coaster season. And I would be excited to see what this team could do in the tournament, because I feel like this is a tournament type of team in terms of talent. So 2 more wins, 3 more wins, and then we can focus on the big dance.
All right, Danny. So what's your prediction for tonight? Penn State at Nebraska. What we got, the 5:30 Central Time tip off, a little early.
I hate it. I hate the early tip. Anyway, let's see. I'm gonna say Nebraska 82, Penn State 77.
I'm going to also say Nebraska. I'm going to say a little bit more low scoring. I'm going to say like 74-68 Nebraska.
Okay. All right.
So I like we both got the Huskers covering tonight. Vegas has them as a 1.5 point favorite right now. So that would be a huge win, not a quad one win, but at this point, Nebraska's got enough quality wins. They just need to add a few more wins to the resume.
They have 6 or something. 6, is it? Or?
Yeah, they've got 6. Yeah, I believe 6 right now. So,
and they've done a much better job of winning on the road, I think, this season. I know it's still a little bit of a struggle, but I feel like they've done a much better job than last season of winning on the road. So it could be a really good game tonight. Definitely not one that's a gimme.
Nope, and It'll be interesting to see how they start. I'm hoping that they start a lot better than they did.
Yeah,
they
they
did
can't
against
start like they did
Northwestern.
on Sunday, or else we're in trouble, I think.
Okay, last but not least, we did want to mention the passing of Greg Sharpe, the truly beloved play-by-play guy for Nebraska football and Nebraska baseball, who tragically lost the battle with cancer last Friday. It's been an emotional time, I would say, for Nebraska fans, who were very used to hearing his voice on the other end for a long time, and it was really cool to see Nebraska rename the broadcast booth for him, and to have that kind of they lit up the field and everything with his image, and then the baseball team to go out after losing their season opener and knocking off number 6 Vanderbilt. That was pretty special, and that one was for Sharpie, and so rest in peace to a truly great human that was lost too soon.
Rest in peace to a truly great human and someone who loved Nebraska athletics. And whenever you turned on the radio, you knew that once you heard Greg's voice, that you were gonna hear a very well called game. And he loved Nebraska, he loved the programs, and he loved the fans, and he took pride in coming to work every day and being a part of the Nebraska community. So this is a really huge loss. And I saw a video, obviously one of the more well-known videos, but it just hit home. Jack Hoffman's run with Greg on the call, and 2 beloved Nebraska supporters and people in Nebraska athletics, and it's just been a rough couple weeks for Nebraska fans. It sucks. It really does.
It does, yeah. Both of those hit pretty hard, and it was hard to see that news on Friday. Just it just won't be the same without Sharpie. But somebody who truly loved the Huskers, and you will be missed, Sharpie. You will be missed dearly. So that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, definitely a big loss, and thoughts go out to his family and all that loved him. And I know many, many, many loved him, and it's definitely not going to be the same this football season and this baseball season. So, it's tough, but I know that he lived a well-lived life and a full life. So there is solace in that, at least.
Yeah, great family, but condolences to his family, and we've been blessed with some truly great broadcasters here at Nebraska. And I like Kent is one of the absolute best. It's a treasure to listen to him. Even when I don't listen to all of his games, live, I love to listen to the replays. Of his got it call, it was so fun to listen to the game. He Braxton May was shooting free throws, or Mia, last week, and Kent gave him a couple of got it calls on the free throws because he was so excited for him, and it just shows how much passion these guys have and what they truly do mean. So rest in peace again, Sharpie. We truly love you, man. You were great, and I'm sure you'll be supporting the Huskers from heaven. So on that note, guys, we'll close out the podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.